Okay, it is 5 o'clock. Please rise and join us for the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll begin with approving today's agenda. Is there a motion to do so? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the agenda as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Our first item of business is superintendent contract. And so, board, what are your wishes here?
I assume it would be appropriate to move one way or another and then discuss it, right?
Yep.
I move we ratify the superintendent's contract.
Is there, okay, there's a motion second. Any discussion?
I have one editorial item, forgive me for being an English teacher, but this is, it's on page, just a minute here. Four of the superintendent's contract relating to health insurance, first sentence of section A. I'd be curious to know how you're pulling this one off, but it states the school district shall provide superintendent and superintendent's dependents with health and hospitalization coverage under the school district's group plan at no cost to the school district.
This language is actually addressing what's called IRS Code 105H, and has to do with highly compensated employees. And so what the purpose is there is that, number one, the health insurance is made available due to Affordable Care Act. We're making it available since due to the issue of the highly compensated employee. That is why it is in the form of a stipend, because he's paying tax on it. Okay, so it's because he is a highly compensated employee that's not in a unit. A superintendent cannot be in a bargaining unit because he's the superintendent. So that is why the language is configured as it is. So number one, he's eligible to be on the plan, but at no cost. So we're covering, checking the box for Affordable Care Act, we're offering it. But he's getting a stipend so he can choose to be in whatever plan he wants to be on, and that is, it's taxed. Does that make sense? Those are a two-pronged issue we're addressing.
Well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the question I have is the district ultimately somehow paying that cost, I would assume?
So the district is not paying a premium. What they are paying is the stipend,
Okay,
which is taxable.
right.
And what is the amount of the stipend?
The stipend, I believe it says in the language there, it is equal to the cost of the district's family health insurance premium, which would be considered the main plan, which is the $2,400 deductible family plan. The value of that premium.
Okay,
Does that make
that's
sense?
The next sentence then. Okay, that makes sense.
The rationale on this is because the Affordable Care Act, I was on the district plan for a number of years till the Affordable Care Act came into play. And when the Affordable Care Act came in, basically they said, yes, you can continue on the district's plan, but we are now going to tax you on the difference that between you and what an average employee would get. So I would have been encumbering a tax because of the Affordable Care Act. So the agreement was, if I'm going to have to pay a tax, let me go buy some insurance someplace else on the open market, so I'm not hit as much on it. So that's the rationale behind the.
Okay.
Well, we'll call the question then. All those in favor of ratifying the contract signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Aye. Okay, vote passes 4-2. Okay, moving on to Director of Administrative Services. Again, looking at this contract. I think you received information on that.
Mr. Chair, I can just give a quick summary if you'd like. Okay, so for the proposed contract for the Executive Director of Administrative Services, basically it is reflecting a 2% increase on the base pay. That's the biggest change in the agreement, and it is a 3-year term.
Has it always been 3 years?
In the most recent contracts, it's been 3 years.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving Executive Director of Administrative Services contract signify by saying aye. Aye. Pull same sign. Aye. Motion carries. The third agreement is with Executive Director of Community Ed. Lori, you want to make some comments on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair and the members of the board, Superintendent Funk. For approval is the Executive Director of Community Ed, and this is a 3-year contract as being proposed. Again, similar here is that the base pay is reflecting a 2% increase each year of the 3 years of the contract, and that's basically the main piece that's changing there in the contract.
Okay, thank you. Is there a, okay, the motion is made. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the Executive Director of Community Ed signify by saying aye. 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 Pose same sign. Motion carries. And the last agreement then is with licensed practical nurses.
Yeah, we went over this quite a bit in closed session, but just to kind of the same theme here, the main thing with the LPNs was that there was a 2% increase on the salary schedule for both years, and then a small increase in longevity as well, and a small increase for health insurance. So 3 pieces there, no significant change in language as I talked about earlier.
Okay, what are your wishes? Okay, is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
There's another, well, the first one was not in there. This one I was confused about. On page 7, under hospitalization insurance again, subdivision 2 of section 1. That sentence, which is separated from the others, employees choosing family coverage will receive the amount received in subdivision 1 for single. I don't know, that makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, that's definitely, yep, that's one we grammatically missed. So basically what that means is they get, if they choose family coverage, they get the $744 in subdivision 1 plus the $215. Yes. We'll fix that.
Thanks, Neil, for checking that out. Any other further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to our study session, first of all, we have Adult Basic Education Program, Penny Yankee.
I'm Penny Yankee. Do you care if I stand instead of sit here? Can I stand there?
Sure.
So one of the things before I always start talking locally about our program is kind of the state. Again, this is the objectives of adult basic ed, and it kind of is really aligning to what the high school is doing now to attain employment, better current employment, achieve high school equivalency or GED, attain skills or certificates necessary to enter post-secondary, learn to speak, read, and write the English language, master basic academic skills, to help their children succeed in school, become U.S. citizens and participate in their communities, and gain self-esteem, personal confidence, and a sense of personal and civic responsibilities. Pretty much matches what our mission is. The main thing I guess I just really wanted to show too is that ABE in the state of Minnesota is way bigger than I think people realize. Here's the total amount of funding that the state of Minnesota spends on ABE. Last year it was $55 million. And if you look at the state ABE, $49 million is spent on ABE. We, besides Minnesota and Connecticut, otherwise most other all states rely on federal aid. So the state of Minnesota really values adult basic ed. So what does that mean for us? So our name, even though technically we're adult basic ed and that's what our UFAR's code are, we changed our name a couple years ago to be called the Albert Lee Adult Learning Center. We just want to honor all of our students. There is really nothing basic about coming back to learn when you're over 17, and so we wanted to honor that. We're part of a consortium, so we're with Austin, Faribault, Winona, Owatonna, Triton, and Pathways, which Pathways is really La Crescent. We're located here. We actually took over the area learning center. So we've been very thankful for our new digs that we have. So we have 4 classrooms, 1 tutor study coffee room, 2 computer labs, which is with me and Julie's office. We have 1 other office, and then we have a child care room. Our staff consists of 10 part-time people, 1 coordinator, 1 office administrator, 1 navigator. A navigator is our person, we hired one through a grant 2 years ago. We have a lot of people who are coming in who need to apply for jobs, who need to register for things, who need housing, who needs food. We needed someone to help them navigate these systems. When English isn't your first language, they need help. So that's what our navigator does. It's really been a real benefit to our class and to our program. So we have 3 teachers. We have 1 classroom educational assistant who basically works with one of the teachers. She works really with the lower English language learners. We have 3 child care educational assistants, and we really count on volunteers. 395 hours volunteers gave to us last year. And we also have Riverland Work Study students, which is a great partnership. We don't pay for them, Riverland does, so it works, it's a win-win situation. Our programming, our main programming is Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 1:30. We do have night classes. It's really demand determined, which means if I have 15 people say I need night classes, I'll run a night class. The majority of our students are working the second shift, 3 to 11. So the 8:30 to 1:30 works good. They're home in time. They get supper and different things ready for their family. So we have English language learners. We have GED classes. 15 students attained the GED last year just in our program. Citizenship. 10 students in the last 2 classes that we've offered, and we have about 8 more that are close. We also hold classes at the Freeborn County Detention Center. We actually took over Riverland Developmental Ed Math. So they used to charge their students and not get credit. 2 years ago, they offered us to take it. We did, so our teacher goes actually out to Riverland and teaches that. The parent educator training, which I actually have a separate slide I'll show. We are an official GED testing center. Digital literacy, which is basically the computer skills that we all need. We have an ABE store, which they use their fake money to purchase things. We have childcare, and we have transportation. We work with Smart Transit, and then we also do field trips. We do a lot of community engagement. We've had a dental clinic here. We work with the library. The library also brings us books. We have numerous community speakers. We've had the police officers come in. We've had SEMCAC, Public Health, U of M Extension. I just put a few on there. That list could be about 50. Free phones. A lot of our families don't have access to phones. There's a program here so we can help them get free phones. Preschool, all of our families who are in our childcare who have 3 to 5-year-olds are enrolled in our preschool, which has made a huge difference in my childcare room because now they're all birth to 3. And then we also have a free table with clothes and food. So it's lots more than just education. Our funding, as I showed earlier, it's really based on state. The only thing that I can control out of that state funding is my contact hours. I get money for all the seat time. Otherwise, it's based on no diploma, LEP count in our district, and then just our population. So then we get a little federal money. I get some from our consortium, and since we combined as a consortium, there's lots more funding, and then state and federal grants. And then our local grants, I get a United Way, which is used specifically for my childcare room. Mayo Health Systems helps pay for tokens. Freeborn County Communities Foundation, I use that to teach at the detention center and also for tokens. And the Education Foundation has given me different things. This is our program last year. So I just want to mention something. These numbers are a little skewed because we ran a para class for our district. So if you notice the white, if you would look at our numbers now, we're at 58% Asian. So the numbers are a little skewed because of our para class that we ran in the district. But if you can notice again, the biggest age group, 25 to 44. And this difference between enrollees and participants, enrollees have less than 12 hours in our program. Participants have over 12. So we have very, very committed students in Albert Lea. 85% have shown up more than 12 hours. Here are the countries that were represented last year. And again, United States, it's skewed because of our para class. But again, if you look at Myanmar, again, the Asian countries, and then those are all the languages that our students spoke. And another thing, employed. We have people who are coming to school, and over almost 60% of them were employed. Really, really dedicated students. Just like the Albert Lea Schools has content standards, this is Adult Basic Education's content standards. We need to prepare people for college and career readiness. We need to transition. They need digital literacy skills, and they really need soft skills. It's just the same thing that we're hearing. So this is how we determine our programming. We've really grown, and that's why I'm so thankful. So this is my 7th year. So in 2013, we had 14,000 hours. Last year, we hit over 24,000. So we're really growing. And then this is just kind of comparison. So with our other consortium, with our other partners. So Albert Lea, in the 4 years, we've had a 66% increase in contact hours. So we worked really hard, and we have a really dedicated staff. Paraeducator training. This started out our community classes. We got a Pathways to Prosperity grant, which was through Workforce Development. They were our partner. It's a 10-week, 60-hour class. We do class instruction, digital literacy certificate, job shadowing, which has been huge. I don't think people have any idea what it is to be a para in our district or in any district. So they actually go out and job shadow our current paras, and then they take the Para Pro exam. We've had 32 participants in our 2 classes. We will continue to run that. At least 50% are already working in our district or another district. It's been hugely successful. Then we did a district para training. special services in January when we had that 2-day break in January, special services said, hey, you guys are already doing this. So we did a 2-day training in January. 90 paras attended the training. What we covered was confidentiality, special education, basics and beyond, mandated reporting, parapro exam preparation. That test is a hard test. Math, reading and writing, above the line, below the line, building relationships, effective communications and resolution, and then they actually took the test. 85 of those 90 took the test, 74 passed, which was an 87% passing rate. So in our district right now, that's how many paras got the parapro from doing our 2-day training. So, and then I think the other valuable thing, and I think Mary Jo would agree, the paras really offered a lot of feedback on what they wanted to see happen in the district. So I met with special services and Mary Jo, and they made their list of what the next training will look like for our paras. The current year, we've had 1 week of class. We have 75 students registered, and again, looking at the numbers, we have 58% Asian and actually 24% Hispanic. 10 years ago, you would have had 75% Hispanic, then Sudanese, and Korean wouldn't have been there. So just like Dr. Funk said in our opening week, the Korean population is really changing the dynamics of our school district, and we have 35 children enrolled in our childcare. They don't all show up at the same time. We have morning and afternoon, but I've had 3 very busy childcare workers this last couple weeks. And then we have 20 students riding the bus through Smart Transit, which is key. Transportation and childcare. If without them, our program would not be nearly as good as it is. Looking into the future, I just got accepted into a cohort. We're gonna look at pre-CNA classes. A lot of our students are women and they want to go into the healthcare field. So we're looking at that. The 18 to 21 transition, their numbers are low this year. Adult Basic Ed is looking at maybe helping take over the I-35, so we're in talks with that. I've just got the okay from everyone. And then we're gonna continue to partnering with business, recruit new students, and then continue to look for funding sources. So, yeah, it's been any questions?
How are your interpreting needs met?
We have a lot of, on the first day of registration, we actually have an interpreter come in just to help. Otherwise, our high advanced students actually work with our lower students. So.
And what do volunteers do?
Volunteers, we have, they work one-on-one with students, or they actually take a group of students to make our class sizes smaller. Or if there's one specific student lately has really tried to pass her CNA, so one volunteer has worked just with her on that. So the volunteers can do numerous things.
Do the adult learners have to pay for these classes, or are they free?
No, they're free. So
Great.
Eligibility, you have to be 17 or older. So, yeah, that's part of the taxes. The state of Minnesota doesn't like us to say free. They're paid for, but not by our students. So, any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, next, we have our energy report. Mr. Lund.
All right, is that on? Good, all right. Okay, let's see. We've been involved with this program since 2004, so we're in our 13th year right now. And over that period of time, we've generated about $3.6 million in energy savings, which is a pretty fair amount. Excuse me. The total energy cost to the district for this past year was $677,000. And I will show you some comparisons as we go through, give that some meaning. And our cost per student is about $186, which is up about $6 from the previous year. So it's gone up just a little bit. This is a little more difficult to see, but you can see over the 13 years what we've actually spent annually, what our percentage of savings has been, and what our actual savings. And the way that's figured is each year we go back to our base year, which is 2002, 2003. And we also then factor in weather, because every year is so different. And that's how we get our numbers on that. So when you look at $316,000 in savings this past year, that's compared to that base year, not the previous year. If we look at our electricity, you can see what we use in 2002, 2003, and what we use this past year. And you can see we're still considerably below our base year, which is where we want to be. We want to stay, even though we're constantly adding things to our district, we still have been able to keep that cost down. You can see our demand is down. And demand is significant because this determines what you pay. And you'll see later that our costs went up this year, and primarily because of demand. It was interesting, in one of our schools I was looking at, we had a high bill, and I couldn't quite figure it out, and I started looking at it, and we used less electricity. Our demand went up, and our bill was considerably higher. So you know, you can't always just look at what you're using, and demand is determined by the highest 15 minutes during that billing period. So if everything in the district is turned on, and it's only on for 1 minute, that's your fee for the rest of the month, regardless of what happens after that. So that's a significant figure there. And you can see where we were in 2002-03 at 6.9 cents. Now we're at 11, over 11. And primarily that's the reason we are actually spending more money for electricity now than we did during our base year. This is just a graph to give you a little bit of the same information. It shows you, the first one shows you the use, and you can see our use isn't really up. It's slightly higher than the previous year, but not 3 years ago. This is 2015, 16, and 17 is what we're comparing to here, not our base year. But you can see our cost in the right-hand graph is quite a bit higher. That's where that figure comes from. Same thing with natural gas. You can see where we were with our therms that we used in our base year and this past year. And again, we're still below that base year. Gas has been fairly good we had a peak about 8, 9 years ago where gas got a little expensive, but they've really held the cost down in the last few years. So we've been able to maintain that below our base cost. And you can see again on the graph where we are with that 15, 16, and 17. We're pretty close. It's a little higher than I would like to have seen because, quite honestly, it was a pretty nice winter. We don't get those very often. And a little concerned then, all right, what happens when we get that Minnesota winter again? But hopefully they're gone. I don't think so. And you can see there the actual cost increase. We had an increase of about $17,000 there. Water and sewer, that's the one that has gone up probably the most over the past 13 years. You can see again, our usage is down. Our usage is pretty consistent month to month, except at the high school where, or at the athletic fields where they do a lot of watering. Unfortunately, again, this year, we haven't had a lot of irrigation simply because we've had a fair amount of rain and so forth. On dry years, that can really get high, so we've been fortunate there. But you can see that's quite an increase in cost over the past 13 years. You know, we're up to 63,000 now, where we were at 40 before, but the cost is over doubled. And that's one that's, they keep telling us will likely continue to rise or even more. All right, and there again is a graph indicating where we're at over the past 3 years. This is a comparison that I like to give you annually. The first is called the Minnesota B3 rating. And what I do is I submit our data to the state every month. And one of the ratings that they give us back is how a school like Brookside compares to other schools, similar size, similar use in the state of Minnesota. And as far as energy use. So you can see out of 100, we'd be 59th. Halverson's a little low. I can't quite figure that one out, but I redid that one a couple of times. But Halverson is a single level building, you know, and it has a lot of the old windows. Here, any heat loss from the first floor goes to the second floor, and same with most of our buildings. So I can understand their square footage is pretty spread out, but that number's lower than normal. And you can see Southwest isn't accurate, as I've told you other years, because Southwest heats Sibley, and there's no way to show that in our data, because the boiler is in one location and the heat is piped into the other building. So I wish I could put in the square footage of Sibley and Southwest and call it Southwest, but then that messes me up on electricity, so we just have to. And that's why Sibley's number looks so great, because they honestly don't buy any gas. They don't have a gas meter in the building. The next is Energy Star, and this is another rating that we get every month, and this would, in order to be considered an Energy Star school or certified, you have to have a score of 75. And it would show you there that our buildings do qualify, as we have it. We're actually an Energy Star school in 2007. I've never applied for it again because it's a tremendous amount of work. And I don't know if it's that important, but I wanted to get the ratings at first because I think that's a good demonstration of what we're doing. And then I also gave the cost per square foot for each building. And the best I could find there is the national average, which is about 84 cents. So we're right in there. When you consider we're in Minnesota and still at about the national average, that's probably doing pretty good. Can't expect to do much better than that. And they always give us the energy impact of our cost savings is equal to 638,497 tree seedlings grown for 10 years, if you're looking at value, and about 5,188 passenger cars not driven for 1 year. So we continue to make good progress. Sometimes I get frustrated. I like a little better progress, but it's probably not as easy as it was when I started because I had a lot of teachers that remembered what it was like not to have money in the district and what budget cuts were all about and what it was like when they said the paper was gone and things like that, and we don't have teachers anymore that remember that. Only a couple maybe, but, so, you know, they were interested back then in saving money. Now it's kind of, so, but it takes a lot of support. It's not my work, it's the work of the staff, because I only go around and remind them. I can only tell them what to do. They can determine if they want to do it. And, you know, I really appreciate especially our custodial staff. They really work hard to make these numbers. And they're probably as disappointed as I am when their numbers aren't good, which is nice to see that support. But it requires the support of the whole district. And I thank you. I think we have a pretty good reputation in the state for this program, and I get contacts from other districts from time to time wanting to know what we're doing and how we're doing it. And when we started this program, now a lot of schools are in one program or another, but when this program was started, we were probably alone. You know, it was pretty early on in this. There weren't many in the state of Minnesota or the neighboring states either, so. But thank you. Any questions?
Are you running out of energy-saving innovations? I know when you started, there were tons of them.
Yeah, well, you know, one thing that was a requirement when I started is I'd go to 3 of their annual training sessions. And, you know, then you'd get pumped up and you'd get ideas and you'd talk to other energy people. Well, that's sort of faded away. So that part of it's gone. And now they do a lot of it online. I'm required to take classes all the time that they offer. And but it's not the same as being there with other energy people. And they've kind of gotten out of schools. I don't think they would take us any longer. In the middle of the winter, at one point, I was contacted by Duluth schools, and they wanted to know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and I set them up with Synergistic, the company that we work with, and Synergistic turned them down. They just weren't in the area. And so I thought, wow, if they won't take Duluth, they probably wouldn't take us anymore either. But once you're under contract with them, you're under contract forever. I mean, we don't pay them anything anymore, but their guarantee is that they will provide us with support. And they've been pretty good about it.
I remember when we implemented that, it was.
Yeah.
And the savings are still remarkable. I think it's good to see those statistics, because you kind of forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it shows the taxpayers were watching how we spend their dollars, and it's still a great, successful program. So thank you very much for continuing that.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Okay, next we have Diane from Sibley.
Good evening, everyone. All right. Over this. What I use, right? All right. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to be looking at our Sibley data and then what we're doing for our building initiatives to improve. So we'll go through. As I'm going, at the end, we'll have time for questions, but don't hesitate to stop and ask as we're going along. These are the things that we'll look at. But here we'll look at our demographics for the state. This is the statewide demographics. So if you look at the English language, English learners, the count, special education, free and reduced lunch, and our homeless for the state. And then if you take a peek at Sibley, our English learner is slightly higher, our special ed is slightly lower, our free and reduced is slightly higher, and our homeless is about the state average. So that's our demographics. This is proficiency of all students in math at Sibley. So you can see the blue line is Sibley, the dark blue line is state, and Albert Lee School District is the green, the lime green there. And then to the right is our reading proficiency.
So, I don't know how, so it looks to
Yep.
me then that there has been a decline
Yep.
in the past couple years.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
This is the free and reduced lunch students and what their proficiency is. And again, you can see that there's a decline in the last 2 years.
What do the red symbols mean?
Those are exclamation points. Kathy, do you know what the exclamation points are? Okay, thank you.
At that point where those are?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
All right, this is our growth. So when we do our MMR results, we have proficiency scores, we have growth scores as well. So you can see where we are for this on track. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, is there a little pointer up here? Is there not? Oh, it doesn't, okay. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, on track includes proficient students who made medium or high growth and non-proficient students who made high growth. So the students who weren't proficient, they still made growth, but they weren't maybe proficient. So you can see that. If you look at the medium and high growth down there, we have that 67.8% right now for this last year. You can see to the left is the graph, the line graph. Yep. And then there's our reading. This is our growth for the free and reduced lunch students. On the left is the math. On the right is the reading. So, of course, as you can see, it's very black and white that our scores in the last couple years have declined. So as a group, as a building, we've sat down, did some root cause analysis, trying to figure out what is it that's going on? Why are our changes? Why are we seeing, as we always want to do, whether you're at proficiency or not, growth or not, you always want to try to figure out what are you doing and what's working and what's not working. And obviously we have some things in place that aren't. So some of the things that we have sat down and said, you know, these are some improvements that we need to do. We need to look at things differently than what we're doing because what we're doing is not. So one of the things that we're going to do is our instructional coaches, which we know that we have one full-time person in each building, is going to spend time meeting with each staff member to go through their individual data. So we'll look at their individual data, make sure that they're understanding what that data says. And then, of course, they always bring that to their teams, and we look at that as a grade level because we want our groups as a whole to move, not just each teacher in a silo to move. And so with that data, then, each staff member is going to set some personal, professional growth, a goal to work on throughout the year, where they'll check in with the instructional coach, and then if they're on cycle to meet with me, I will be meeting with them as well. We'll talk about some of those growth things, finding out what do you need as an educator, because our students are learning, but we need our adults to be learning as well. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure that they have the tools that they need in order to be successful. So through that, our instructional coach and myself will be doing some modeling of some things. Maybe it's instructional strategies that they might be needing, whatever it is that comes to light that they might need. We will be doing some modeling of that to make sure that there's understanding versus here's something to do, go try it. Just as we do with our students. We want to make sure doing that with our staff. The other piece that we want to look at is focusing and prioritizing standards-based instruction, really looking at what those standards say. We have a lot of new staff in our building in the last 2 years, and we want to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page, so it's spending time with them to make sure they understand what are the standards, how does it relate to the curriculum that we have, so spending some time doing that. Unpacking of the standards means, what is the standard actually saying, and are we actually going in depth with those standards, or are we kind of watering them down? So making sure we're understanding that. Looking, where do we want, what's the end goal for our students? Where do we want them at the end? And going backward, how do we get there then? So that's kind of that unpacking standard piece. A lot of things to come, the interactive learning structures, the focus with that is student engagement. We know that our students need to be engaged in their activities and what they're doing, so you've heard all along that the elementary focuses on responsive classroom. Many of our staff have done further training on responsive classroom. We had Responsive Classroom 2 come out, and so we have some of our teacher leaders doing some training. But this is some things that come out of Responsive Classroom where we'll be working with our staff and trying some strategies, engagement strategies, and teams will go back, they'll take a strategy, try it with their kids, and come back and teach the staff, what worked, what didn't work, so that we're all sharing those effective research-based strategies with each other. And just empowering our teachers to be leaders, learning from each other, strong leaders, and making sure that they are on board with that. We have instructional learning team, or our leadership team, where we have grade level, we have a rep from each grade level versus just some grade levels, so the ebb and flow of information back and forth between grade levels is consistent. And then we also have special areas, like special ed or social work, those types of areas. And then this summer, we went to the PLC hybrid training. So most of the people that are on that leadership team are those people that have gone to that training either in the past or now, so that they've had some training on being a leader in your building, being a teacher leader, and what it takes to make a movement, to change and make positive change in your building. The other piece that we're seeing at Sibley is a demographic change, culture change in our building. And so staff are asking for more training on some of those pieces and understanding. So our success coaches, we're going to do a parent night where we bring in our newer Korean and Hispanic families and do a family night to get them on board, to make sure that they're understanding how can they get help from us, and then making sure we're spending time with our staff. Our success coach is going to do a presentation to the staff on culture. So they'll talk about the Korean culture, the Hispanic culture, to make sure our staff is understanding how is it different than maybe our white population. So we'll be doing some more training with that. That's something that they're asking for. And then really looking at our positive discourse, where students are doing most of the talking, not out of turn, but we know that there's research out there that shows if our students are doing the talking, they're doing the problem solving, really doing the work versus the staff doing the work, they're understanding and learning more, the effective. So making sure our staff understand those pieces, going deep, digging in deeper in those specific areas, but there'll be things that come out, but those are our priorities for this coming year. So, questions?
I have a question how you came up with those initiatives. What process did you go through?
Yep, last year, at the end of the year, and we didn't have any results back. You have some preliminary results, so we go through and we laid things out. What are we doing? We talk in groups as a staff, brainstorming. What do we think is going on? Why do you think things are happening? Again, in the fall, coming back, we had some new staff, making sure they're hearing the same things too, because I think if you do have a change, I think you're used to training and doing some things with those people, and making sure that you have everybody on track of where you're going and what your vision is, where we're going as a building, as a district. And sometimes that gets lost, and we have to make sure that we're doing that. So doing it in the spring and the fall and having that conversation and brainstorming with everybody, and then taking it back to our building leadership team, which then, okay, let's narrow this down. What are we seeing? What's the ebb and flow back and forth to your teams?
Will there be any analysis done on attendance or behavior issues that are removing kids from classrooms?
Say that, the behavior piece again? Yep.
They're either out of the classroom from being home or being in the office,
Yep.
that kind of thing.
We, right now with, we are increasing the amount of time I meet with my social worker and the new guidance counselor every week now. We're having printouts of attendance. We're kind of stepping up the game a little bit on our attendance policy as well. in fact, making parents more aware of what that looks like. So after 3 absences, unexcused absences, calling the families and saying, you know what, we've noticed that your child's missing, has 3 unexcused absences, is there something we can do? And then at 7, you know, just making sure they're aware of what the law says, you know, with that truancy. So we're looking at that and looking at tardies as well. With our change, we're seeing some changes in the amount of tardies that we have. So what can we do to prevent that? And making more phone calls and talking with families. How can we assist? Are there barriers that have? And I know in the past it's been, I can't get my child out of bed. So it's been working with a social worker. Now we have that counselor piece to add to that also. So yes, we are. Also with our behavior, last year we started a school-wide behavior plan at Sibley, which we hadn't had a school-wide prior to that. And so we're keeping track of our behavior reports and looking at those every month to see, you know, what types are there minor behavior incidences, major, what are the consequences that are happening, are they in and out of class? So we're looking at that as well. So increasing that is another initiative that we've started last year, but really stepping up a little bit more with that this year because it was new last year. Yep.
I know that Dr. Funk had mentioned more parents opting their students out. Is that happening at the elementary schools too, and at Sibley, or is that more at the middle school, high school level?
Well, I know it is more at the high school and middle school, but we did have some at Sibley. There were some that opted out. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but we did have a few that did that.
Do you think that may have impacted scores slightly?
It can, you know, if you look at, you know, we can make some predictions on those students that didn't take the test. Would, you know, what kind of student are they? Would they be a proficient student? We can make guesses based on some other data that we triangulate, so it could. Yep.
That is an option statewide as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Where all of the
yep,
state
absolutely,
comparisons.
yep.
Just as, this may be a little early in the year to ask this, but are you ready for an e-learning day?
Oh, do you think we're going to have snow this year? I don't know. We are in the works of getting all those pieces ready. Yep. Spending time with our district days as well as teams, talking about what those things should look like. So yeah, I think we're there. Met with my success coach today and talking about how do we get that information out to those families as well, and so that parent night I know will be of help to get that information out to them, because looking at it they'll go, you know, a lot of our families, what does that mean? And you know, so making that clear. So
One
we're
of the
working.
things in the
Yep.
statute is you have to have an MOU with your bargaining unit for e-learning, and so we've been in the process of meeting with the ALEA for input, and I think hopefully here in the next meeting or two, we'll bring that to you for approval.
I know that's just something with the elementaries, that'll be a very interesting procedure, and I'm interested to see how that all comes together.
Yep. Yeah, we've looked at some models from other districts and what they have done too. So not always starting from scratch and reinventing the wheel is always a good thing. So taking a peek at that and then hopefully making it better for us and beneficial for our students as well to make them successful in those days. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Lakeville Elementary. Nick?
All right, sounds like it's on. Good afternoon, good evening, I guess. Thank you for having me out here today. We're very excited to come and share some of the wonderful things that are going on here at Lakeview with you all. So, as Diane said, if you have a question that comes up in the course of our conversation, feel free to ask it at any point in time. If you'd rather wait till the end, I'm okay with that as well. Might be some overlap from what you heard from Diane, but I'll try to delve into it as much as I can from a Lakeview perspective as we go. So. There's our agenda, looking the same, and then we move into start looking at the demographic information. And so this is a similar slide as far as what the statewide demographics would look like. And then we can move on to the Lakeview demographic information as well. As you look at that, you can see that we are roughly 50% free and reduced lunch in the most recent iteration of this information. We're kind of up and down a little bit, plus or minus that 50% for the 4 years that I've been there, so that's been pretty standard for us there. Special education population is probably going to grow and change a little bit too, just because of our success programs and our options programs that we have there too, where we house some of the some students from across the district in our building as well. So as far as English language learners, that's pretty stable for us over the last few years as well. Okay, when we start moving into the proficiency information here, math on the left and reading on the right, we are, in looking at all students who had tested last spring, you can see that those are our numbers. For math, we're just right around 76%, and then for reading, we're right at about 66%. So not much movement up necessarily as we look at this. The interesting thing that we have found when we started diving into data as well, from the same report card page from the website of Minnesota Department of Education, we can also look at students who had been with us from the October 1 date too. So when we look at our students who have been with us from October 1 till the end of the year, we have seen some really positive results with them. Math pushes us from about 76 to almost just over 78% number, and our reading goes from 66 to just over 69% too. So when we look at the kids who had been with us for pretty much the whole year, we saw some pretty positive data points as far as that's concerned. But we test the kids who are there on the days that we test, and that's the data that we work from and that we go with as well. So nonetheless, those are our numbers, and we're very excited about where we're sitting with math, that's for sure.
Could you just explain that one more time about how the numbers changed when you looked
Sure.
at only the October?
Yeah, thanks for that question. The data that they show us right here is limited to all the students who had tested 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade on the days of the test. So if they moved in the springtime, after spring break, they're still testing and they're still a part of this count. We can also set it back, so students who were enrolled on October 1st, what does that look like? And when we roll that back to students who were just enrolled on October 1, we saw that there was a pretty significant change in our data at Lakeview. It's not always that way. Typically, it might be a percentage point or a percentage point one way or the other, but we saw some pretty significant changes at Lakeview nonetheless.
Do you have a percentage that come in after October 1st?
This past year, it was quite a few more than what I had ever seen since I had been either at Halverson or at Lakeview. Especially in 4th and 5th grade is where we saw our biggest changes for students who were coming in after October 1st. In fact, many of them were enrolling after Christmas break and around spring break as well. So that changes each year. Last year might have been a little bit more of an anomaly. The years before that, it might be 1 or 2 or 3 kids, 3, 4, and 5. This year it was quite a few at each grade level that we saw a little bit of a change there. And that's why we saw such a big change in what those numbers looked like when we looked at October 1 date or we looked at all students as well.
Do you find a large percentage are ELL students that come in later in the year?
This past year, I think it was a mix. We saw a few students who would be receiving ELL services, others who would not have been. It was just a little bit more of a mix this past year. One thing that I wanted to just kind of point out here too is that, you know, as I had shared, we're really happy about our math scores, and as I get into some of this other information about what our plans are moving forward, I'll talk a little bit more towards the reading piece of it as well, and how we're going to start moving forward with that. But we don't want to forget about math either. Just because we're happy with where we're at, we still want to keep moving that needle upward as well. So that's our math and reading, all students and their proficiency there. Next slide moves to math and reading, all grades, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for our free and reduced lunch populations. And so you can see how that has changed a little bit over the past 4 or 5 years. Again, math really stands out as a strong point for us at Lakeview, especially in comparison to the reading scores that we're at as well. You know, 67% roughly of our free and reduced lunch population kids are proficient, where you can see the trend line for our district and then also the state. It's significant, I think, almost 25 percentage points higher than where everybody else is at throughout the state. So math certainly becomes something that we look at, and so how can we replicate that a little bit more in reading, where we're seeing a little bit more of the mountaintops there, where it's up and down a little bit more.
Is that possibly a result of the fact that some of the students taking these tests aren't English-speaking people, or have trouble with English, so therefore their reading
It very well may be a factor into it, Neil, absolutely.
But they probably, the inability to read English doesn't affect their ability to do math, perhaps?
Yes, and I think, yes, and another piece to it is, with both reading and math, part of the online component to the test is you can click on and have parts read to you.
Okay.
So they don't necessarily have to be able to read it, they can hear it. More of that is shared during the math piece than it is during the reading piece, so that might change a little bit of it too. Because when they test for reading, we don't want, or when they test for math, we don't want reading to be a barrier for whether or not they're doing well in math. Reading obviously is gonna make a little bit different of a look to it, but they have that option to listen to it while they're testing.
Thank you.
And when we move to the growth information here for our students, here is our math growth at Lakeview. And Diane shared a little bit about the students on track for success, and that just looks at proficient students, medium or high growth, or our non-proficient students who had made that high growth. We're looking at those students who really need to start seeing a big jump maybe in their performance from one year to the next. That would show that they're starting to make that push towards being on track. And so you can see where we sit for that, for both math, on track for success, and then the total number of students who are making medium or high growth or even low growth on the left hand or on your right hand side as well. So when we look at that medium or high growth in math, we've seen 90% of our students make that, or just shy of 90%, I guess you would say, meet that target, which is really, really good. And when we think about how we are growing our students from the start of the year to the end of the year, from one year to the next, to see that 90% of our students had made that medium to high growth was, that was really very nice to see as well. And then here you can see our reading scores for our reading growth for all students as well. Slow growth going up for the number of students who are, percentage of students who are on track for success. Again, some nice figures there for medium to high growth for our students, but not quite where we're at for math either. So just shy of 85% there too. So moving in directions that we would like to move in, but we also know that we want to start seeing more of our students start ticking upward as well. Okay, here's the growth information for our free and reduced students. Math on the left, reading on the right. Reading again, you see we're a little bit more up and down with that right now. Math, we're kind of trending up a little bit again here since 2015.
Was there a major change in 2015 that caused it to jump then the last 2 years?
You know, that's a good question. I think that one part of where we're at right now is at Lakeview, we're seeing, especially at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, our teams of teachers that have been together for a number of years. So that collaboration might be at a little bit different of a level than maybe some other grade levels that I have, K2 perhaps, or look at our kindergarten. You know, they're brand new again this year with a couple new teachers, and so 3, 4, 5 in particular, we've had some pretty stable groups that have been there by and large, so that collaboration piece of them working together, I think only benefits this. For math, we can also look at, we began our new math program, it was right, yeah, probably that year, wasn't it, Mary Jo? That year as well, so so we look at Envisions 2.0 starting in 2015, and where we've gone since then, or where we've moved since then, have netted some very positive results for us at Lakeview as well. So that's exciting to see.
You mentioned collaboration of your teachers in your school. What about like 5th grade teachers throughout the district or fourth grade and so on.
That's one of the things that through Mary Jo's initiative, we started to bring back last year. And so I think our fifth grade group is meeting, what, Wednesday? Tomorrow? Yep. So we're going back to that model that we went away from a few years ago. And that way the different grade level teachers from across the district can bring best practices together. And so I think that we'll see some success there from the district level.
And then moving on to our last slide that we have here today is some of the initiatives that we have that we'll be looking at for this school year for our building improvement, school improvement plan as we move forward. Collaboration is top notch, top number one, I think, for us at Lakeview and throughout the district as well, I would say, is just, how do we go about making sure that we're not working in silos and moving forward. And part of that, too, is not just working in silos as a grade level team either, and how are we sharing those ideas within our building 4 to 5 or 3rd to 4th and so on and so forth. And so if we're seeing something work really well at one grade level, then let's share some of that information so that we can be seeing it and how it can impact students at other grade levels as well. So collaboration is certainly a top priority for us and will continue to be a top priority for us as we go along. We also look at professional learning communities, or PLCs, as part of that professional collaboration piece. But that's just one part of it as well. So we look at how are we collaborating outside of that 7:30 to 8:15 time on Wednesday mornings, grade level meetings, or after school and different things like that too. So it becomes really all-encompassing there for how we're working. PLC work that we do, continue to grow and strengthen the work that we're doing within our PLCs in terms of focusing on our students and the needs that they may have, and that changes week to week and year to year and month to month. And so are we able to sit together in a trusting group of 4 to 6 to 8 or whatever it might be at certain grade levels and feel good about the conversations we have about, what, that really worked, or, what, I didn't see the growth in the students in my classroom that I wanted. I noticed that you did. What were some of the strategies that you utilized within your group of students? I would like to implement those so that I can see how it works for us. And then just moving down from that, just that high-quality instructional strategies to really engage our students in both math and reading. Reading is, as you can see from the data, the area that becomes a little bit more of a area of focus for us at Lakeview this year. It's been our building goal, specifically the last couple of years, as far as what the teachers have been choosing for our ATPBS building goal. And so they're looking at that as we need to keep moving the needle on our students from where we've been to where we want them to be. And 66 or 69%. Still, we're seeing some growth take place, but we want to, how do we keep moving that up? And so we've had some really good conversations in the first few weeks of our school year together prior to the school year starting, and then since as a staff about what are we seeing and what do we want to start moving forward with. And reading has come to the top as what do we need to do as we move forward. Some of it was what do we need to change to improve where we're at for reading, and I think that's a good mindset to have. But we want to also caution our teachers that there are still, at Lakeview, we're seeing some things that are really working with our students from year to year to year. So let's not try to shift everything to the side and say we need to find this brand new plan on what's going on. And that's where we get back to what instructional strategies are we utilizing, math, reading, or otherwise, to really engage our students and have those conversations. From there, we look at just also parent involvement and engagement, too. We see some really good parent involvement at Lakeview, and we're really excited about that, and we're happy to have our parents be a part of it. Whether it's like on Thursday, back to school picnic, or our movie night, or fun night, and things like that. We see some really good responses from our parents being a part of our school and part of our school culture. We want to start looking too, and Diane mentioned this, about how can we engage our parents in things that really start to shift the needle in their understanding of what school is like for us and for their students, and how they can better support their students at home, whether it be reading, math, or something else. And so part of it is having a parent engagement night, or our success coaches are talking a little bit more to maybe targeted demographic areas. talked about the e-learning days. Last year, we got snowed out or bad weathered out 3 times that we scheduled this, but we were going to have last year what we were going to call our academics and appetizers night, where we were going to have parents come in. We're going to provide some childcare for our students or parents if that was going to be a barrier. And then parents would have the opportunity to visit different classrooms or different areas of the school where they would then learn about how they can help support their child at home, whether it be something that we've implemented in technology. Seesaw would have been the piece at that point, or the new math program, because it is different from what we learned math in the past. So we had all these different pieces that we were going to put in place so our parents could come in and then walk away and take home items and use with their kids. We got snowed out 3 times. We took it as a sign. We're going to try it again in November, and we're going to go from there. But those are the ways we're looking to engage our parents. We like having them come and enjoy their food, movie night, popcorn night, and all those types of opportunities. However, we also want to provide them with time to learn more about what's going on within the school, and we look at that as being a great way to involve them and engage them too. Diane talked a little bit about the instructional coaching. I'm really looking forward to how we move that up a little bit this year in terms of how our instructional coaches are meeting with teachers and setting goals and working throughout the school year with that. Having a 1.0 instructional coach in the building, I'm really excited to see how we can really do some awesome things with that work as well. So the sky's the limit with that, and I'm very excited to be on the front end of it, that's for sure. And then the bottom is Lakeview Can Do Kids. We also had some work last year done with our building-wide behavior plan, and part of that came out of it is at Lakeview we have Can Do Kids. And so a lot of the cultural piece that we talk about, environment piece that we talk about is, are we being a can-do kid in the work that we're doing today? Positive attitude, saying that we can get things done, saying that we're going to work our hardest to get through it, whether you get it right the first time or not, but we're going to have that positive attitude and mindset as we work through things. So those are some of the things that are going on at Lakeview. Questions?
You have high numbers in both proficiency and growth, and you've kind of told us, how different pieces impact both, and how I can see how these initiatives could impact both. Do they both just kind of go hand in hand, or are there some nuances that you could pull out that would be different for proficiency and growth for a student?
Some different strategies that might be used to show those differences? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or just general, like the home environment.
Sure.
Would that impact more one than the other, or those kind of things?
Yeah, I think that there are a few factors that might play into it, and we saw the free and reduced information up here, and we can oftentimes look at that population as a group that really struggles and has a hard time getting through things and may not have been exposed to some of the things that other kids have been exposed to, and yeah, that's true in many ways. And unfortunately, we can't control that home environment. What we try to control is what takes place within the classrooms and build that positive culture within that. And so a couple of things that we do and have done over the past is, before my time, we have something that's built into, it's a once a month thing in the morning, what's called Lakeview Families, where we take part of our morning meeting, and it's a K-5 thing. So if I'm teacher A, I have the same group of kids, maybe 10, 11 kids that start with me from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. And once a month, we sit down and we meet and we talk a little bit about social emotional type things. This past year that we just rounded out, the focus was really on growth mindset. And so kids were having opportunities as young as kindergarten to spend time with older kids and engage in activities that really built that can-do growth mindset. And I think that helped play a big part in it. And when it came time for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to test, you could see that they were prepared mentally for that. And it didn't matter where they were on the scale, from being red did not meet as a 4th grader to, now a green as a 5th grader. Our teachers, K-5, have done a fantastic job. Our staff has done a fantastic job instilling that mindset of, we're going to get things wrong. I get things wrong. We all get things wrong, but how do we work through that and process through that and don't put our hands up and just say, we quit. I don't want to try anymore. So I think that mindset piece plays a big part into it, very much so. And then the other part is that collaboration piece too, and I don't want to sound trite in saying we just collaborate and that's how it works, but it's time that has been spent together by our teachers, K-5, where they understand and they see what that goal is and what they have in mind, and they work to try things. We've empowered them to, if something's not working, what can be a plan to make it work? And you know what, it might not work that way, but how can we change things to make it this way? And so, not just sitting back and feeling like, okay, we're just gonna go through the motions and see what happens by May. It's, all right, what are we seeing with our kids week to week, day to day, month to month, and how do we target some of those opportunities to help them grow and learn in a way that's going to be most effective? And they really target down in on that.
See, what you just commented on is interesting, and I totally agree that some of the things that you mentioned are extremely important, the can-do attitude, the mindset, but what tests do these kids take that provide some sort of data that would reflect the extent to which they have mastered a can-do attitude? The yardstick that we use to measure the success and the growth and proficiency are standardized tests, which essentially measure the extent to which our students have mastered certain standards that have been decided are important by somebody else.
Right.
And yet we have students for whom some of those skills are not necessarily a major part of their world, and yet it's difficult for us to invent some machinery that would present skills that are a part of their world when the skills that we need to measure may not be a part of their
Right.
world.
I mean, you're absolutely right. There's no hard data that we can look at to say, here's how that really fits in. That's the feel that you get when you walk into a classroom. When kids are learning and their peers are cheering them on, you can do it, you can do it, you got this, keep working at it. You can see that when testing is starting and the teacher is telling them, you know what, you're ready for this and you're good to go. Not saying do your best because it's testing time and this is such an important piece. It's you got this. You've spent the time learning this, and you know what, if you can't answer that question the first time through, bear down and think about what strategies we have used in the past to help you. And it swells their confidence as students of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade to say, you know what, I may not know it right away, but I'm sure going to give it my best shot to get that right answer. And they do a fantastic job with that. Before being a principal, I was also a part in a district where I did the testing coordinating. And it's not as much of a factor now because we don't go to the labs. We don't have a lab anymore because of not the space. But you would see a difference in how kids would test based on how they arrived at the lab to test, right? Some kids would arrive and it was just, all right, we're here, and it was they blow in and teachers trying to get them going and ready to get testing, and they struggle the whole time. The focus is not there. You have other teachers who prepare them, and they walk in and they're ready and they're focused and they do a nice job with it. And so just providing the students with the opportunity to understand that this is just another day of learning, another day of showing us how much you have learned. And you have this and you understand it and you can move with it. But there's no way we can quantify that and say, here's the hard data to show growth mindset part of it. That's just the feel and what you see with it, that's for sure.
That whole can-do spirit to me feels like you're promoting resilience in the kids, where they can know that it's normal to fail, but that they can look for other ways to do their best or succeed in the places where they do have strengths. And it does kind of give them that confidence to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. And kind of going back to the question that we had, I think that mindset and that attitude really plays well to what we're seeing with our math program and the, you know, I mean, we're approaching 80%, and that's 80%, and that's what we're looking for as a district, and that's what we've asked of us, and that's a pretty cool thing for us to be looking at. It fits really well with, okay, I didn't solve it this way, but I can solve it that way, or I can give it another try. And where we at Lakeview are grappling a little bit right now is how do we take that same type of attitude and mindset and apply it to reading, because it's two different camps. And so part of our strategy as we move forward with instructional strategies, student engagement, and that sort of thing is how do we flip that to see some of those same responses with math or with reading that we have had with math. And It's going to be a real cool process, I think, to be a part of, but it's not an easy solution to say, this is how it's going to happen, because reading's a different animal than math, and that's okay, but it's going to take us a different mindset to get there. Any other questions?
Thank you, great report.
All right, thank you.
We're about ready to adjourn, but I just wanted to remind everyone that the Education Foundation has their annual meeting next week on the 14th, and there's a forum at 4:30 where there are some people here that are involved in that, and the forum is going to be about the Greater Education Project and our steps there that we've taken and results. And so if you get a chance, please attend. There's no cost for the forum, there is for the meal if you attend that afterwards. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Second? Meeting is adjourned.